India has been one of the most favorite destinations for the foreign investors. That is why IMF positioned India as the fourth largest economy in the world. That created waves. Hello my dear students, welcome all of you to my YouTube channel Joyful God. I hope all of you are doing good. I hope all of your UPSC preparation is on track. Dear friends, you might have watched my previous video where I've introduced my new initiative called Easynomics, under which I will be discussing economics related current affairs in both prelims and mains UPSC examination point of view. Yes, under Easynomics, I have launched a series of videos discussing current affairs from January to June. Right? As I discussed in the previous video, I am dividing this current affairs series into multiple topics so that you won't get bored by watching a lengthy video. Okay? So, let us discuss the first part in this video, which is regarding macroeconomic policies, under which I am discussing today GDP and economic growth. Right. I am touching upon the important current affairs related to GDP and economic growth which have surfaced from the months January to June. Let us go through. Firstly, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has released GDP estimates for the financial year 25. That means 20, 24, 25. As per the GDP estimates, India has achieved a growth rate of 6.5%. What growth rate? Growth rate? It is real GDP growth rate. Right. So now, as per the real GDP, India's GDP value is nearly 190 lakh crore rupees. Right. Just remembering the GDP figures is not sufficient. You should also know the trend. How GDP is growing. Right. It is important for both prelims and mains examination point of view. Dear friends, don't assume that prelims examination is only about facts and concepts. They also ask analytical type of questions. So, analyzing economical concepts is very important. So, as this graph says, can you see? We have seen a negative GDP growth in the year 2020-21. All of you by now would know the reason. Why? It is because of COVID. Right? So, there were a series of lockdowns. So, entire economical machinery of the country was shut down. So, GDP had become dysfunctional. And then we achieved a recovery, that is called V-shaped recovery. And immediately, we achieved a growth rate of 8.7%. Why did we achieve so much of high growth rate? Because of, there are so many factors. One factor is base effect. What is base effect? Can someone comment below in the video? So, thereafter, we have been able to achieve consistent GDP growth, that is 7%, 7.6%, 6.15%, that is for financial year 25, right? But this data, that is 25-26 quarter 1, that is this year, this financial year, in the quarter 1, we were able to achieve 7.8% growth. Dear friends, MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, releases GDP data on quarterly basis. Right? You do not have to remember GDP data on quarterly basis. Just remember the recent GDP figures, that is annual GDP figures, as well as the trend. That is sufficient. Okay. So now, tell me, which is the body responsible to account the national income under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation? Which is the body? That is National Statistical Office. So, for factual understanding, you should all know, in 2019, Central Statistical Office and National Sample Survey Office, both of them merged, right, to give rise to National Statistical Office. This can be a prelims question for you, right? We move ahead. So we saw real GDP growth rate figures. Now, what is the growth rate of nominal GDP? See, in general, when we discuss macroeconomic conditions of a country, right, how GDP is growing, we consider the growth with respect to real GDP. So don't get confused. If there is a question in prelims, what is the recent growth rate of Indian GDP? You should not say it is 9.8%. And you should also not get confused. Sir, they have not specified whether it is real GDP or nominal GDP. So when they talk about GDP growth, always focus on real GDP growth. Then why this nominal GDP growth figures we have to remember or we have to study? Don't remember, but I will tell you why it is need to study. So we'll move on. As per MOSPI, nominal GDP has grown at the rate of 9.8%. India's nominal GDP is accounted for 330.68 lakh crore rupees. It is nearly $3.8 trillion. Okay. So why this nominal GDP figure is important? Maybe they may ask in prelims, why? In what context? Observe this diagram, right? So as the real GDP, even nominal GDP had seen negative growth in the year 2021, following which it has achieved again V-shaped recovery. Then onwards, focus this, then onwards, the nominal GDP is continuously decreasing. Can you see this? Nominal GDP is continuously decreasing. That can be a question. Now tell me, what is the difference between real GDP and nominal GDP? You must all know the basics. If you don't know, remember this formula. Nominal GDP is equal to real GDP plus inflation. In other words, inflation adjusted nominal GDP is called real GDP. How do we measure inflation? Right? By CPI, Consumer Price Inflation. As well as we also measure inflation based on GDP deflator. So let us discuss them in the pertaining chapters related to inflation. Now tell me, again, this is a question for prelims. Though the real GDP is stagnant or it is healthy, right, or it is stabilized, why nominal GDP is decreasing? Why so? It is not such a rocket science. Just remember the formula. Right? Nominal GDP also depends on inflation rate, isn't it? Right? Though the economy is growing, if the inflation is coming down, that means nominal GDP figures will come down. Are you getting it? Right? If the inflation is coming down, though the real GDP is stabilized, nominal GDP will continuously decrease. That is why we are seeing a decreasing trend in the nominal GDP, though we are seeing a stable trend in the real GDP. Are you getting it? That can be a question of prelims. Right. So one more estimate is given by MOSPI, that is gross value added. So do not have to remember in terms of GVA, GDP figures are enough for you. But why am I quoting this figure for you? Why am I putting this data in front of you? Look at this. Real GVA is 6.4%. That is growth in real GVA, gross value added. What is gross value added? We'll see this formula soon. Look at this data. Real GVA has grown by 6.4%. Come here. Real GDP has grown by 6.5%. Why GVA has grown at a lesser rate compared to GDP? You should think. Just remembering the data facts will not ensure you that you have understood the concepts properly. Deep dive in understanding every concept is very important to gain necessary confidence in UPSC. Right? Don't you think so? Why GDP figures are growing much faster than GVA figures. Similarly, nominal GVA figures also. Nominal GVA has grown at 9.5% interest rate, 9.5% rate, while nominal GDP has grown at 9.8% rate. Why so? Here comes the formula: GDP is equal to GVA plus product taxes minus product subsidies. Isn't it? Look at this carefully. Right? Let's say, so what is GVA then? Bring them onto the other side. GVA is equal to GDP minus product taxes plus product subsidies. Isn't it? Now, GDP is growing. Let's say, let us understand a trend. Right? Let us understand the trend. Right? If government continuously increases the product subsidy, remember carefully, observe carefully, if the government continuously increases the government subsidies, what will happen to GDP? Though there is increase in the production of goods and services, we can see a lesser growth rate in GDP, isn't it? That means even if GVA increases, GDP decreases. If government increases subsidies regularly, that means you can observe a trend wherein the growth in GVA will be bigger than growth in GDP. Isn't it? Otherwise, if the government increases the taxes, and decreases subsidies, if the government increases the taxes and decreases the subsidies, what kind of trend do we see? We will see the growth in GDP will be bigger than growth in GVA. So now, can you logically connect this idea to why GVA rate is lesser than GDP rate? Yes. Rationalization of subsidies and increase in the tax has led to more GDP growth rate compared to GVA growth rate. Are you getting it? So that is the only reason I have put these figures. Otherwise, you do not have to remember the GVA growth rate. Just GDP growth rate is good enough. Right? Understood? Let us move on. So, sometimes UPSC may also ask, okay, you said that GDP has grown at 6.5% rate. Which are the sectors that have contributed for that growth? Primarily, we'll focus on only few sectors. Look at this graph carefully. Construction sector has grown at a 9.4%. That is the huge contributor for GDP growth. Construction sector. My dear students, can you tell me under which category construction sector come? Does it come in the primary or secondary or tertiary? It comes under secondary sector. Yes, it was a question once upon a time in UPSC Prelims. I don't think they may ask it again. You never know. Construction sector has contributed to 9.4%. Construction of roads, buildings, infrastructure, etc. And then we have something called public administration and defense. That has contributed 8.9% GDP growth. Followed by financial and real estate sector, 7.2%. I don't expect you to remember all of this. At least remember this, construction sector. Okay. So, we'll come back to the graph again. Let us focus on what is this public administration and defense. So, I think you are clear about construction sector. You may also be clear about financial and real estate sector. Financial, banking transactions, credit flow, real estate, right? But what is this public administration and defense? What is public administration and defense? Dear students, do you remember the GDP calculation formula? Expenditure method. GDP is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Remember, right? So, do you know what are the C, I, G, X minus M? You would know. That is net exports. So, what are the CIG? C means consumption. So, let us go through CIG. In normal terms, you would have had C means consumption, I means investment, G means government expenditure. So, what is C? C here is private final consumption expenditure, PFCE. That is C. Private final consumption expenditure is C. What is private final consumption expenditure? All the households, they buy a lot of things in day-to-day life. Groceries, house utensils, car, vehicles, gold, etc. All that comes under private final consumption expenditure. Right? And one more interesting thing. So PFC, private final consumption expenditure, includes household expenditures as well as expenditures incurred by non-government organizations like charitable trusts, as well as one interesting thing, private final consumption expenditure also includes expenditure by resident Indians. Expenditure made by resident Indians in abroad. Let's say I'm a resident of India. I may go for a foreign tour. I'll go to some Dubai or some, Vietnam or Thailand. I spend some money over there and come back. That is also counted as part of your private final consumption expenditure. Did you get it? Right. Just remembering the formula is not enough. You should deep dive into understanding each and every term because these are very important concepts. Right? They may anytime surface in your prelims question as well as mains question. There are so many questions regarding GDP in mains as well. Right? So, you know what is C? What is I? That is called gross fixed capital formation. Gross fixed capital formation. Fixed capital. Fixed capital is what? Right? You build roads, you build bridges, okay, you build hospitals, you construct houses. That is all gross fixed capital expenditure. Got it? And now comes G. What is G? G is government final consumption expenditure. Government final consumption expenditure. Government final consumption expenditure. Under government final consumption expenditure, what are the things come? Salaries, pensions, whatever the government spends for the expenditure purpose. Right? Under GFC, public administration and defense and other services is a major part. Got it? Now, did you get it? Where does this public administration and defense come? It comes under government final consumption expenditure. Right? If GFC grows, that means the term G will be more, that means GDP will be high. Right? Now, did you understand where does this public administration and defense comes in? Okay. Now, focus on other two things in the graph. Agriculture and allied sector has grown at 4.4%, but the manufacturing sector has grown at 4%. Can you see? Agriculture growth has overtaken manufacturing sector growth. That is one more interesting thing that we observe in the GDP growth rate of financial year 25. Okay. So, agriculture growth rate has improved significantly from 2.7% in financial year 24 to 4.4% in financial year 25. That means in 23-24, agriculture growth rate was 2.7%, whereas it is improved in 24-25 to 4.4%. That is a significant data point here. Can you tell me why? It can be a mains question. Why agriculture has achieved significantly higher growth compared to the previous year in financial year 25? What can be the reason? You should learn. On the surface of it, the reasons are, first thing is good monsoon. Second thing is base effect. Third thing is flagship schemes like PM Kisan, Fasal Bima Yojana, DBT, increasing rural credit flow, etc. These are few reasons wherein which the agriculture has achieved a significant growth rate. What is this base effect? I am bringing the term for the second time in this video. What is base effect? Look at this graph. That is the graph of agriculture growth. Can you see this? In 23-24, we have seen 2.7% growth rate. But in 24-25, we have seen 4.4%. So, one of the reasons I told you is base effect. What is base effect? So, tell me, how do you measure the growth rate? You measure the growth rate compared to the previous year performance, right? Let's say, in the previous year, let's say for the example's sake, so agriculture output was like 100 lakh tons or a million tons for, okay, million tons. This year, the output is, let's say 150 million tons. Got it? So, there is a growth of 50%. That's how the growth is measured, right? Now, come to the point of base effect. What is base effect? In 23-24, there was insufficient monsoon, right? Due to insufficient monsoon, the farmers did not grow sufficiently, or whatever the crops that were sown, they were ruined. Got it? That is why output reduced. Maybe the net sown area would be lesser. If India has some 15 lakh hectares of land, due to less rainfall, farmers didn't take a risk. So that's why they left half of the land barren. So they did not utilize the land completely. In 24-25, the monsoons recovered. So the farmers now gained the confidence. Right. Now they started to sow the entire area. They became confident enough to invest more in the agriculture. So they grow more crops. See, increasing the rate does not necessarily mean the productivity of the agriculture is increased, but the produce is increased. I hope you know the difference between productivity and produce. Productivity means production per hectare area. Right. To improve the productivity, you have to employ a lot of scientific farming, efficient, policy implementation, etc. Right. That's a structural reform. There is a long way to achieve that, but it cannot be done in 1 year. Right. That is why, just because in 23-24 there was a less rainfall, there was less produce, and in 24-25 the rainfall was sufficient, then the farmers were able to grow more. Since we are comparing to a year where there are less production, 24-25 has seen higher growth rate. That is called base effect. We are comparing to the year where there is less production. That is why naturally the growth rate will be more. That is called base effect. Right. So we have seen base effect in the previous graph also, right? Here in GDP graph, 2021 there was a negative growth rate, and suddenly in 21-22 there is a spike. Base effect, right? Okay. Because you cannot expect everything to be better in 1 year, right? So there are few challenges in the provisional GDP figures. Though we can say India is the fastest growing economy, India has achieved India has recovered from the COVID pandemic. India has achieved the status of post-COVID economics, etc. But there are still some issues with respect to estimated GDP figures. What are they? So what are the challenges? First one is slowing nominal GDP growth. We just saw the graph. The nominal GDP growth is continuously falling. Right. We also understood the formula. Nominal GDP is equal to real GDP plus inflation. We also understood the reason behind falling nominal GDP figures because inflation is getting controlled. So you can ask me, sir, if the inflation is getting controlled, why do we call it as a challenge? Why do we call it as a challenge? There is much to understand here. See, first implication of reduced nominal GDP is your tax collection. Fiscal headroom, right? The slower nominal GDP growth reduces fiscal headroom. Headroom means fiscal space, right? If there is more tax collection, government will have more space to spend, right? See, if there is less inflation, less prices, right? Your indirect taxes depends on value. If the prices value go down, your indirect tax collection also go down. Yes or no? Yes. If the indirect tax collection go down, there will be less fiscal headroom. So the tax collection will be directly depending on nominal GDP figures, not on real GDP figures. Are you getting it? Yes. So if the nominal GDP slows down, there will be less headroom for fiscal policy, right? There will be stricter fiscal policy. Government cannot spend generously. That is one implication. Second is all these macroeconomic indicators like debt to GDP ratio, fiscal deficit to GDP ratio, they appear to be higher. They appear to be higher, right? In this ratio, the GDP value that we take here is not a real GDP value. It is nominal GDP value. Why this debt to GDP value matters? To understand the health of debt, public debt. How much percentage of debt is good for economy is measured through this formula, debt to GDP ratio. If the nominal figures are going down, then it is natural that your debt to GDP ratio will look higher. Though the government does not create a new debt, still the debt to GDP ratio looks higher, right? Similarly, fiscal deficit. Though the government is controlling its public expenditure, the fiscal deficit value looks higher because of reduced nominal GDP value. So that is the implication of reduced nominal GDP growth. Third thing is, see, inflation can be reduced. So we just discussed that though real GDP is stable, why nominal GDP is going down? Because of inflation is controlled. Inflation can be controlled or can be reduced for two reasons, right? You know, right? Supply side inflation and demand side inflation. Inflation is getting reduced because reduced import cost, it is good for economy. One more time. If the inflation is getting reduced because of reduced import cost is good for economy. What if the inflation is getting reduced because of reduced demand? Reduced demand is also one of the reasons for reduced inflation, right? So, is it good for economy? Is it good? If the inflation is getting reduced because of reduced demand is good for economy? Definitely not. Right? So, as per the formula, if inflation decreases, nominal GDP sees a decreasing trend, growth trend. So, inflation can be decreased for n number of reasons. Two of them are reduced supply side, supply side cost or input cost, as well as reduced demand. So, reduced demand is not a good sign for any economy. So, in that way, reduced nominal GDP growth also may point towards demand side vulnerabilities. So these are the implications of reduced nominal GDP growth. So, and what are the other challenges in GDP? Manufacturing growth rate is lagging behind agricultural growth rate. We just saw agriculture is growing at 4.4%, while as manufacturing is growing at 4%. Why it is a challenge? You may ask me that, so agriculture is growing at a good rate, so it's good, it's a good news. But manufacturing sector creates more employment, right? Agricultural sector leads to disguised unemployment. Right? If there is no growth in the manufacturing sector, what happens? People migrate from urban areas to rural areas. That is called distress-driven rural migration. Youth migrate from urban areas to rural areas. That is called distress-driven rural migration. That will also lead to urban joblessness. That will also affect India's structural reforms. What is structural reform? A country's economy has to grow from agricultural economy to the manufacture-based economy to the service-based economy. Right? It cannot go in the reverse direction. Right? From manufacturing to the agriculture economy. That's not a good sign. India, through many initiatives like Stand Up India, Startup India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Product Linked Incentive Scheme, etc., it is promoting manufacturing sector. Right? Why? Because elasticity of employment is more with respect to manufacturing sector. What is employment elasticity? I am bringing you a new term. What is employment elasticity? What is employment elasticity? Do you know? Simple formula. Percentage increase in employment to the percentage increase in GDP. Right? Right? Percentage increasing employment with respect to the percentage increasing GDP. That is called employment elasticity. Employment elasticity for manufacturing sector is more compared to service sector. India is a service-based economy. But service sector is not able to create enough number of jobs. That is why our GDP growth is called jobless growth. That is why government is focusing on promoting more and more manufacturing sector. But if the manufacturing sector is not growing at a significant rate, what happens? Our structural reforms will take a back seat. It lead to distressed reverse migration to the rural areas, as well as it creates urban unemployment. Are you getting it? Yes. Move on. And it also leads to socio-economic challenges. Urban youth unemployment, rural distress migration, and inequality risks. Inequality risks. Why? My dear friends, you all know nearly 50% of GDP or more than that is contributed by service sector. Service sector is merely for skilled employment. But what about semi-skilled or unskilled? Their percentage is high. Right. Only these people are gaining good income. But semi-skilled, low-skilled, unskilled people are laying behind. Don't you think it will create inequality among society? Manufacturing-led growth is the effective solution to bridge this inequality gap. Just relying on the service sector will increase that inequality. That is why government is bringing in reforms in the manufacturing sector. But if the manufacturing sector itself is lagging behind, then it will lead to inequalities. Got it? So these are few challenges related to the recent estimated GDP figures. Now, very important. There are a lot of news flowing around with respect to Indian GDP, that Indian GDP has surpassed Japanese GDP. Is it true? Have you heard about that? We'll discuss that. International Monetary Fund, one of the Bretton Woods institutes. Which is the other Bretton Woods institute? It is, yes, World Bank. IMF releases World Economic Outlook biannually. You should remember this. Biannually, IMF releases World Economic Outlook. In the World Economic Outlook, IMF has given some figures. In the month of April 2025, IMF said something which created sensational news. What did IMF say? As per IMF, the nominal GDP estimates, so it is wrongly given here. It is not for 25-26, it is for financial year 25. That is 2024-25. IMF has released estimated figures of GDP for financial year 25. That is for the year 2024-25. What IMF said? IMF said India's nominal GDP would reach $4.187 trillion. It also went on to say it would be slightly higher than Japanese estimates of GDP figure, that is $4.186 trillion. It is merely high by $0.07 trillion. That is why IMF positioned India as the fourth largest economy in the world. That created waves. So look at this graph. This is, I have taken it from IMF website, right? So India's growth estimate is 6.2%. India's nominal GDP value is around $4.19 trillion. Right? That is for estimate of GDP for financial year 25. Right? There are some other data also. You can go to the website and see yourself. Soon after that, CEO of Niti Aayog, right, BVR Subramaniam, he jumped the queue and announced that India has already become a fourth largest economy in the world. And he also went on to say that in another 2 to 3 years, India would become a third largest economy, right, surpassing Germany. So which are the top 5 economies in the world? USA, China, Germany, Japan, India. So when the moment BVR Subramanian said this, everyone started to circulate the news that India become a fourth largest economy. My dear friends, we just saw the estimates given by MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, our own body. It said that India's nominal GDP figure is nearly $3.82 trillion. See, IMF estimated. You should always remember the terms properly. It is an estimate. IMF estimated the figures to be surpassing the Japanese GDP figures, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. So, as per the data given by India's National Statistical Office, right, India is still 5th largest economy in the world. Japan is still the 4th largest economy in the world. India has not overtaken Japan yet, based on the actual data, right? According to IMF, India is set to become 4th largest maybe in the upcoming year, 25-26. Did you get it? Right. Until India surpasses the Japanese GDP nominal figures, as per India's agencies, NSO, we cannot claim that India is the 4th largest economy. Get it? Next. Though we can say that, let's say in future or next year, by next year itself, India surpasses Japan. Does that mean that India is more developed country than Japan? No. There are other metrics also. Look at this. Per capita. GDP per capita. For India, GDP per capita is as low as $2,880. But whereas for Japan, it is 33,960. It is more than 10 times. So, my dear friends, surpassing the GDP figures does not necessarily mean that we have become more developed country compared to other countries. Because of we have a huge population. We have to feed all of them. Right? Just surpassing GDP figures doesn't mean that all our quality or life qualities have been improved overnight. Right? It doesn't happen like that. So economics cannot be understood by only one metric. We have to comprehensively look at all the metrics to know whether it is real or not. Okay. On the other side of the growth, we have achieved an immense growth with respect to GDP in last 10 years. That is more than threefold. From 2014 to 2024, our nominal GDP values had increased from 107 lakh crore to 331 lakh crore rupees. That is nearly threefold increase. How do we do that? There can be a question, because in your syllabus there is how India has progressed from LPG era. So maybe they can ask how India has achieved threefold increase in GDP value. There are few points in the bird's eye view, or most importantly, we can see some points which are responsible for driving India's huge success in GDP growth. One is structural aspects. My dear friends, you may recollect n number of points, but it is very important to organize those points. Organizing your points is very important to make your answer looks more professional. Right? So this is how I have divided the points for the answer for key drivers of India's GDP growth. So these are the dimensions. One is structural aspects. What are structural aspects? Urbanization. Urban centers are rapidly growing. You can't imagine what was the real estate price in Bangalore in 10 years ago and now. You can't just imagine how exponentially it has grown. People are coming to urban centers. More money is flowing into urban centers. More opportunities are getting created. People's income is getting grown. Real estate is expanding. Right? Doesn't it contribute to the GDP? Yes, it does. Rising aspirations. People continuously striving to improve their quality of life. Right? They want to, today they have bought a bike, tomorrow they want to buy a car, today they have gone for, out of state trip, tomorrow they want to, go abroad. Right? Increasing aspirations. Demographic dividend. The mean years for India's population is around 28 years. The mean age of India's population is around 28 years. That means there is a huge working age population contributing towards GDP. That is, again, one more important structural aspect. Strong domestic demand. India's economy is a demand-driven economy. 141 crore people. Right? There is a huge demand. It attracts a lot of companies to come and invest in India. These are the structural aspects. Policy-wise, there are many significant policies contributed to this growth. Some of them are GST implementation, IBC. What is IBC? Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Corporate tax cuts. Recently, the corporate tax has been reduced from 30% to 22%. That is continuously been happening. The structural reforms in the taxation is continuously happening. Infrastructure push. There are some significant schemes or policies. National Infrastructure Pipeline, PM Gati Shakti. What are these? If you want me to explain all of them in the coming videos, comment below so that I'll get more motivated to bring on more content to you for free on my YouTube channel. Yes. There are initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat, production-linked incentives. All these policies have significantly helped India to achieve this growth, that is threefold increase in the GDP. Technological aspects, right? Digital public infrastructure through unified payment interface, JAM Trinity, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, that has given push to digital economy. That has increased demand. That has increased fintech companies to pitch in to bring in more innovation in the economy, right? Technological aspect has increased the economical spirit in the economic survey of 2022, I think, they had mentioned the animal spirit of economy. They have awakened the animal spirit of economy, and it has led to rapid GDP growth. And without forgetting, strong global demand for Indian IT and software exports. So post-COVID, there has been continuously increase in demand, global demand for India's IT and software exports are also a major contributor for GDP growth. And last but not the least, external aspects. Increased GDP FDI flows. Now, in financial year 25, there is nearly $81 billion of FDI inflow has happened to India. India has been one of the most favorite destinations for the foreign investors. Got it? And also, there is one more reason, recent reason for FDI inflow is China plus one policy. So what is China plus one policy? I'll give an example. Apple company, it has decided to manufacture its entire iPhone 17 device that is upcoming. They are going to release it soon. Entirely assembly, fabrication, entire unit of manufacturing to be situated in India. And they have also put a target of manufacturing nearly 60 million devices from India. Right? Why is it a big news? It is because many such MNCs, especially manufacturing companies, they were overly relied on China. Significant portion of their manufacturing was happening from China. Due to various reasons, what are they? Basically, increasing labor cost in China and geopolitical tensions that is happening. There is a tug of war between West and East. So now these manufacturing companies have decided to move on from over-dependency on China, and they are looking at other attractive destinations for their manufacturing base. And India and other countries are one such. Other countries means Southeast Asian countries. India is also emerging to be one of the attractive destinations for MNCs to establish their manufacturing units in India. That is also leading to more FDI inflows. Got it? That is about China plus one. If you want to know more about China plus one, why is it happening? What is the root cause? How India is going to get benefited? If you want me to do that video, comment below in the comment section to motivate me to do more videos. So my dear friends, this is about macroeconomic policy. Under that, we discuss GDP. So my dear friends, this is about macroeconomic policy topic under our Jan to June Economic Current Affairs series under Easynomics initiative. Hope you liked it. If you find it interesting, like it and share it. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe it. If you have any suggestions for me, please comment it below. Or if you want to do more videos on some specific topics, also comment it below. As well as you can get this PDF from the Telegram channel. The link is given in the description below. Right? So this discussion will continue for other subsequent topics. Keep supporting me. If the content is qualitative, encourage me. If there is more need to be done, suggest me. We'll meet you soon. All the best for your preparations. Thank you very much.